start putting music on. They don't have to listen. Good evening, everybody. This is Jeff. This is Junior Hockey Live. I'm here with Bloomer, Mike Bloom, all the way from Chicago. I am in Western New York, and we are ready to talk a little junior hockey as we start to recap and wind down the year. And it's been a great year for junior hockey, in my opinion. Across the board, I think most leagues had pretty phenomenal years with a good product. We can argue if it's been the best year for overall talent at the junior level because, the ebbs and flows of big surges within USA Hockey over the years. You see surges come, you see them go, and I think probably the last big surge we had was that 99 through 01 surge. But that's a different story. Mike, how you doing?
Not bad. Everything's moving along, man. We're getting closer to camps that are heating up. We got endings of seasons, so this is actually an exciting time for us, at least, because we're already starting to build on for next year, and we're just getting to the first steps of it. So a lot of work to be had, though.
A lot of hope, a lot of anxiety, a lot of anticipation from teams and players. It's a two-way street this time of year. Hockey families always think, well, they don't realize there's the same kind of emotions that are going on with coaches, with owners, with managers, with scouts, because all of them are looking for that feeling of having a winning team and everything going right, and people appreciating their team and seeing good things and seeing their work pay off. So it's a good time of year. I agree with you. It's a good time of year. Hey, give me a recap. You watched the whole game last night. I didn't get a chance to watch the whole game. I jumped in and out on my phone probably 8 or 10 times during the night, but didn't actually sit down and watch the game. Give us the NAHL championship. Why don't you break it down, what happened in Blaine, and then walk through the whole Blaine experience for us.
Yeah, so once we got to – well, it was actually – I guess it was Blaine. It just wasn't at the Schwann Center this year, so that was a little bit different than what I'm used to. But it was Austin facing off against – or what were the matchups here? It was Oklahoma had Minnesota.
Correct.
And Austin had
Maryland.
That's right. Well, Austin obviously made it past Maryland. Oklahoma City made it past Minnesota. And then the two of them faced off for single elimination. So for those aren't familiar, it's best of 3 in the series up until you get to the championship game, and then it's just one game. So that was last night.
That question came up on the discussion group. Why do they do it that way? Do you have an answer for that, Mike?
I don't. I mean, I have my own assumptions, but I don't have like a clear-cut answer of why that is coming from the league or anyone from within it. So, I think, the season has gone long enough as it is. And, in many cases, these guys are pretty beat up by this point. And if you have a best of 3 series, this thing could just drag on even further. So I don't have an answer. I don't know if you do, but that's my assumption.
I think that's part of it. I think logistics, the fact that the guys, what's the first game of the week? Thursday? Is it Wednesday or Thursday? I forget. The best of 3.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I don't know. I think it might be Thursday, if not.
Bottom line, the teams are already coming in for a week. They're all put up in hotels. They're eating meals. The families usually come in, and that's a long period of time. If you stretch it out, let's say you win the series, the best of 3 series, and the other team wins the best of 3, and they both go 3 games. You got to have at least a day or two of recovery before you start another best of 3 series. I would assume you can't go the next day, and then you'd have to play a best of 3 again with no determination of when the final's going to be. The final could be the second night, or the final could be the third night. I think this sets an exact date of when the championship is, which allows people to plan on that exact night for the championship. I think it keeps it condensed into a 1-week period for anybody that's going out to visit or spend time at the event. I just think it's a control issue just as much as a financial issue. And then the powers that be might think of the welfare of the players. Like you said, they're being tired,
Yeah, I think there's a lot of
first
factors.
priority, but yeah.
It also is if different colleges are wanting to come and really scout that event, to have one specific day, it's a little easier for them to plan on. And, obviously to get a good crowd and all of that stuff that you're going to want for a championship game, for everyone to know that this is the game makes all of those things fall into place a little easier too.
Yeah. Okay. So sorry to digress there. Jump back in and finish telling us what happened.
Yeah, so the game itself was fantastic. Like, honestly, of all the NAHL championship games I've watched.
This was the game against who and who?
Austin versus Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. And Oklahoma made it all the way through without a loss, I believe, throughout the whole playoffs, if I'm not mistaken.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yep, they definitely did. So credit to them. They really didn't get tested up until the championship game, because honestly, either team could have won that game, and both teams had leads at some point in the game, and it was just back and forth, even to the point where Oklahoma City scored. I think there was like just over 3 minutes left in the third period. They scored to go up 4-3, and then they actually took a penalty with like 2 minutes left to go in the game. So Austin finished on us, pulling their goalie and having 6-on-4 for the remainder of the game, which they had, different chances. And I mean, the game was just so exciting. It was really close, but yet it wasn't so tightly checked where you didn't get to see opportunities. There were breakaways that happened for both teams throughout that game. There were really good chances that ended up happening, whether the goalie made the save or not. There just was a lot of excitement. It was physical. You got to see the speed and the skill that some of these teams had. And, it ended up becoming just a really good, well-played hockey game. And, credit to Oklahoma City for finding a way to win it. And again, just kind of keeping that South Division tradition of having a champion come out of that level is cool to see, especially for us, being a part of that division.
Yeah. So, set aside the pandemic, the pandemic year. But if you take the last 5 seasons, maybe 6, it's now Oklahoma City, Lone Star, and 2 for Shreveport. So out of the last 5, maybe 6, I'd have to go back and look. But there's 4 of 5 or 4 of 6. Guys, don't quote me on that. I don't want to be, trying to pump the tires of the South. But the South dominance is there. There's no doubt about it that it is the division, and it's kind of hard to argue. It's kind of hard to argue when it's kind of the SEC of the North American Hockey League.
Yeah, they've had quite a good showing, and even last year when New Jersey won, New Mexico was in the finals, and gave them everything they could. And some people might say that New Mexico kind of ran out of gas there at the end after going through a gauntlet, and that happens sometimes. Where we've said it all along that the South Division is going to be a player in who wins it. But sometimes they take themselves out with just how physical it is to get to Blaine and to obviously win it. It's tough. It's not easy to win a Robertson Cup.
It's not easy to win a Robertson Cup at all. I can tell you that the toll that the players play is enormous. On a personal note, and this, my son made it all the way to the Robertson and won the Cup, and then within 4 months had 2 major surgeries because of his run the second half of the season, last half of the season, and through the Robertson Cup, he postponed a shoulder surgery and basically played through an injury that ended up being a back surgery. That's not, that's not that far fetched. I'm not saying every kid's going to have surgery after they play the Cup, but this is no different than playing for a championship at different levels. You suspend things that you can suspend, and you set aside the little ouchies, and you play through some things that won't injure you more but are very painful, and it's arduous. You watch these teams play, and they all have bags under their eyes. They all as soon as they get a chance to sit down somewhere, they're sitting down. I mean, wherever they're at, if they get a chance to sit down, they're sitting down, because it's just a totally different energy level when you try to win something as intense as that event, and that is extremely intense event. I think it's maybe the Centennial Cup has some similarities, but boy, oh boy, being able to observe both of those events over years, I think the NAHL is probably the hardest junior cup to win of all the junior cups.
Well, and I think what makes it even more difficult is just that they have to play series, and the USHL does that as well, where you actually get some rivalry that ends up brewing within that series, which makes guys finish checks even more than they would before, and maybe take the lumber to somebody a few times, just because there's some rivalry there now that was created. And that just adds to the wear and tear, but it also adds to the emotion of that series where, the Centennial Cup is really good hockey, but if it's not a series and it's just you play, a couple different crossover games and things like that, unless you had any type of built-in, hatred or aggression towards that other program before playing against them, it's more just a game that you're playing against another good opponent, whereas the series is really add another layer, to this whole playoff run that a team is going to go on.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that, because they play it in more of a round robin. The finalists all play each other, or as many as possible. I don't know what the number is now. That honestly, I did not look this year at the bracketing on it to see if it changed a little bit now that the last two seasons, because the BCHL is out, but the thing that is the most interesting, though, that swings the pendulum a little bit back over to that whole Centennial Cup model being tough, is they all have to win their championships coming through the regular league first.
Right.
So if you're in Manitoba, you've got to win the MJ. If you're in Alberta, you got to win the AJ. And the only team that doesn't have to worry about that is the host team, and that rotates around the country. So boy, that part makes it tough. It's a very long road for their cup too. But that rivalry thing, and that lining up and having to play a team, possibly in the first round 5 times, that's NHL style. I mean, that's really, really tough stuff.
Yep.
Sorry, excuse me. So tell me about the USHL. And the
So
only
the
reason I want you to
USHL
tell me all this is because, remember, there's only one person that picked both the NAHL and the USHL winners.
Yeah, thanks for recognizing my abilities. I appreciate that.
Go back to the tape.
We've tried this. There's no tape there that shows that you're
I'm
winning.
I'm going to recover the tape. I'm going to pull the next week. I'm going to have an edited version to show you who picked the 2 winners. Are you saying I did not pick the 2 winners?
I'm saying that when we went on a little bit of a lull of picking matchups. So to the point of when the NAHL got into the semifinals and the USHL got into the finals, we never made picks. So you did pick Youngstown to beat the Steel, which I didn't have. So you get a point there.
So I'm the champion. I'm the champion of the USHL. Okay, next.
But in the NAHL, you picked Shreveport to beat Oklahoma City, so you got dinged there.
But what did I say there? Do you remember what I said?
So you want double credit. So whatever the scenario happened, you want both sides.
I picked Shreveport as a sentimental favorite, and I said OKC was probably the best team in the NAHL.
What told you that? The standings when you looked and saw that they were the best team in the NAHL, or
Because
your
they
own
kicked the crap
assessment?
out of just about everybody. Would they only lose 5 games during the year?
Uh, so anyway, in the championship for the Clark Cup, you had Youngstown facing off against Fargo, and surprisingly, Youngstown won all 3 of the games. So they swept that series. The first game they won 4-1. The second game was a lot more of a challenge. They won in overtime 2-1, and then in the third game they won a high flying, high scoring 1-0 game. So credit to Youngstown and Ryan Ward and Jason Deskins and Ryan Kasecki. They did a nice job. Honestly, like that was a surprise for me because I think we did maybe a month or two ago just who we thought was going to make the playoffs for the USHL. And they were like right on the cusp of whether or not they were going to make the playoffs when we did that episode. And then they went on a run.
Go to the tape.
You did mention that they were a team that you were high on and thought would get hot, which they did do. So you're getting some credit. I'm definitely giving you some credit, but you want all the credit.
I want all of the credit.
You did not earn that.
Okay,
Don't
very
get
good.
greedy.
So we did mention the Centennial Cup a second ago, and this it's kind of a broken record in my book on the best team. And what really bothers me about this is the CJHL, because they want to be politically correct, because they want to be woke in the hockey world, in a different term than we're talking races and genders and all that stuff. They want to be woke to be inclusive of all their leagues. Every year, these polls that they do internally, they post them on their own website, and they barely mention the AJHL, the best league in the whole CGHL. They barely get Brooks into the top 5, and then all of a sudden Brooks does what it does. And it just amazes me that Brooks doesn't rebuild. They just reload. They grab another superstar, put him in place. They go out there, and don't get me wrong, they don't lose players unless the players jump to go play Division I hockey. Those guys stay there. They're loyal to that program. You don't see them leaving to the USHL. You don't see them leaving to the NAHL. They stay there. And for an AJ program to keep players out of the USHL and the NAHL, that tells you the strength of that program. I mean, there's players like Makarov come out of there, but that's not – if you look at the list of D1 talent that's come out of that program over the last 5 to 8 years, the list is as long as my arm. Right. And they're good quality programs that are taking these kids. Yep. This is right now, in my opinion, Brooks is the model franchise to beat in all of junior hockey. And it's a combination of, support of the community. It's a combination of a good coach and good management. It's a combination of their fan base, but it's all in place for them to do what they do. Brooks is a juggernaut. They're absolutely the best team in Canada when it comes to anything outside of the OHL or out of the majors. Let's just say that. Yep. Unbelievable program. I don't think they get enough credit either stateside. College coaches give them credit, but nobody else gives them credit stateside or in their own league. It's almost they're so good that the league tries to downplay them every year. And then other junior polls out there from some of these yo-yos that are advisors but pretend to be in the junior hockey news business that post their own polls, they're almost as ridiculous because they'll put the SIJHL above a BCHL team. All this silly nonsense. Come on, folks. If you're playing junior hockey at the junior A level in Canada and you don't recognize that the majority of the BCHL teams are the best teams in Canada, okay? And there's an off year for each team. I'm not saying that across the board they sweep everybody, but the majority of those teams are better than your team in any other league. Okay, easy to figure out how to get that number. We'll do it off of counting D1 commits. When a team has that amount of D1 commits, they're better than you. If they have 8 D1 commits and you've got 0, they're better than you. If they're putting 8 to 10 guys into D1 hockey and you get 2 guys to go play D3 hockey and a couple guys to go play ACHL, or maybe a couple to go U Sport, they're better than you. Period. End of story. So, folks, don't look at these polls with any kind of reverence. They're vanity polls. They want every league to feel good out of the consortium of leagues that they have, which is 9, the CGHL, province to province to province, except for Ontario with Northern CCHL. Ontario has 3.5 because the SIJHL is half in and half out. I don't think, not the CGHL, the SIJHL is half and half there, Minnesota and Ontario. So that's my rant for the night. Holy smokes, those polls kill me. Brooks is good, folks. Brooks is really good. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, they're the best. And just to add one of the other layers to a point you made is when you look at where in D1 their players are going, there's a lot of big boy schools in there that their players are going to. So when you look at commitment for commitment, as far as just the total number of players on their roster that get committed, you also have to look at the next layer, which is what type of D1 schools are these kids going to? And you're going to get, the big boys of the world that are taking some of these kids, North Dakota's, UMass, all these different programs, Arizona State, some big schools that are pulling players from there. So that I don't know why anyone would knock anything that Brooks is doing. Not only do they win, but they advance their players and develop their players even. Because some kids that I saw as midget players, some of them you're like, geez, this kid's ridiculous. And you hear they're going to Brooks and you're like, well, of course they're going to Brooks. But there's other players that are they're good, but they're not superstars. And then you see them play a year or two for Brooks. And next thing you know, they've got 75, 80 points and they're getting committed to a really good school. And you're like, wow, not something I necessarily saw, but that's the end result.
Yep, you're right on track here. I'm looking up elite prospects right now, and I pulled up the NCAA. I'm gonna filter something out, and let me see if I can put you on. I'm doing this a la carte. Yeah. Doing this a la carte as we speak. So I didn't put any thought into this. Let's see if we can. Let's just go up here and sort out and say you have to have played for Brooks. Brooks Bandits, right there you are, Brooks. Okay, NCAA hockey. Look at the list.
Number one, the best college hockey team in the country, Western Michigan.
Best college hockey team in Western Michigan. And that's still arguable. But let's look at this list here. First of all, you've got drafted players. He's a signed.
Not even.
Yeah, he's
not even drafted.
Yeah, he's a signed player.
1 year in college hockey.
Yep. University of Michigan, Wisconsin. This list is not a bunch of the lower level programs. This
North Dakota.
This is incredible. You've got Cornell, Vermont, Bowling Green, Colorado College, Colgate, Quinnipiac, Sacred Heart, and this is amazing. So there's 41 guys in college hockey. That averages 10 guys coming out of Brooks in a Division I a year. That's not bad. That ain't too shabby if you assume a 4-year window. If you assume a 5-year window, well, I have to take my shoes off to do that math. But
and the one player you're showing there, we joked around, but Ryan McAllister played his freshman year for Western Michigan. So 1 year and did really well. He was up for a Hobie Baker as a freshman, and then all of a sudden signs a pro contract right after. So, he didn't do his development at Western Michigan necessarily because they only had him for 1 season. His development, again, when you look at some of his numbers, and then he gets to Brooks and he explodes. That's kind of some of the point that I was trying to make before, where it's if you would have looked at what he was as in the Gojo or even in the BC when he was playing there, you're not going to think this is a professional hockey player necessarily. you might be thinking, I wonder what college he's going to make it into D1. He gets to Brooks and it just absolutely explodes.
139 points in 60 games. That's a pretty good year there.
Looks
Um,
like my men's league stats.
yeah, yeah. I think you got the decimal point in the wrong place. But I want to see what year, because this is something I don't know. I want to see what year he committed to them. So he committed. Well, first of all, uh, junior nights, nationals, BCHL. He confirmed there. It doesn't have when he confirmed to Western Michigan. So interesting. And but it's just a good story about Brooks and the amount of players they put in there. So I know I digress from time to time, but I thought that was worth talking about and showing people that is a legit team. And if you have any questions, this is the time to ask them, folks. If you're out there, I know we've got a pretty solid audience out there right now. If you're not watching on the recorded version and you're watching live, shoot us a question. You can shoot it through the Facebook that you're watching. You can message either one of us. You can go to our personal Facebook pages. We're broadcasting all over the place. YouTube, if you're on YouTube, I don't know if you can message us right away on YouTube. I think you can. And ask a question. Ask us what you think about something, or tell us what you think about something. And we'd love to listen to your opinion or give you our unbiased opinion as much as possible. And we try really hard to keep that. I don't know if you noticed, Mr. Bloom, did you look at our Facebook, Junior Hockey Advisor Facebook discussion group numbers lately?
No, I haven't. You mean like total?
9,100 folks in that discussion group now. We're coming on the cusp of 10,000, and that's according to people that have been in the hockey world that spend a little more time than I do watching, the growth of groups and pages and things. That's one of the fastest growing groups in the hockey that is dealing with hockey issues since Facebook. That we're really just knocking it dead on the growth. Because remember, we're just a small slice. If you think about versus talking about weight loss or talking about Princess Diana murder mysteries or whatever else people talk about on Facebook. Showing us your meal, taking pictures of the food you're about to eat, and snapping pictures of it, or what else people do on Facebook. I don't know, but we have just people interested in junior hockey here, and with the advisor side of things. Now, remember, Mike and I aren't advisors. I got to use there. We're not advisors. Okay, we are guys involved in the industry that have had a lot of experience in the industry that are trying to give you advice on how junior hockey works. So when you go to these discussion groups or you watch our videos here, don't think we're soliciting to get you to join us in our advisory group, because we don't have one. This is it. We talk hockey, and we talk junior hockey specifically, and we try to get a better explanation to you on how these leagues work, where good things are, where bad things are, without listen, we don't take sides on there's leagues that are better than other leagues. We try to push that and actually say that, but we're not going to tell you that if you're playing in a league that's not as good as the USHL that it's a bad choice. There's a place for every junior league. It just may not be that we think that league is better than the USHL or better than the AJHL or better than the NAHL. They all have their hierarchy and they all have their place. So, okay, we got our first question coming in. Mr. Bloom, go ahead. You got it.
What is the difference between being offered a tender and being drafted for an NA team? So the tenders come out in November of every year, and those tenders, typically you're going to have 10 for the year. Teams can obviously trade those to acquire more, or trade them for players to maybe go on a playoff run, so on and so forth. So you're going to think that a team at least has 10 to start with, and then whatever they do with them, is up to that individual team. The tender is the most coveted asset for both the team and also the player, because the team is going to look at different players that they want to bring on for their team, hopefully, for the next season. And the player is going to want to know, where am I going to play? So it's a mutual agreement between that team and that player that this is where they want to play, and this is where, or this is the person that the team would want. So the best way to look at it is when the first round of the NA draft happens, all of the other teams have used their tenders before the draft. So if they had 10, think of the draft as round 11 when you finally get to it, because they're going to have tendered at least 10 other players, or again, could be less or more depending on what they had for their list. So that's the best way to look at it. A draft is a kid basically not exactly knowing where they're going to go until they're selected. So they don't really have a choice in the whole process. Whereas if they tender with somebody, they're choosing that program.
So to get more deep, Mike's very good. Your explanation there was spot on. To get into more in-depth discussion on that, go to the YouTube page, Junior Hockey Advisor. You can go to the Junior Hockey Advisor Facebook page too. It might be a little bit more difficult to scroll through, but if you go to the content on the Junior Hockey Advisor YouTube page, as you can see, I showed you where they're at. There's a NAHL draft and there's an NAHL tender listed right there that explain this all. So in 15 minutes and 65 seconds, you too can be an expert on the NAHL draft and the tender process, and let that and a cup of coffee get you to the next level. So anyway, while you're there, you can look at how USA Hockey works, how the draft picks in the USHL, where they come out to. Oh, look at this one. Junior hockey rankings are worthless. What you need to know. Subjective rankings of the Canadian Junior Hockey League, comprised of 10 separate Canadian Junior League, blah, blah, blah. You'll find out the truth there. I feel like we're doing a Fox News broadcast right now, where all the conspiracies are being unlifted and we're showing people where to get the real information. So right there, it's all there. Junior Hockey Advisor. So hopefully that helps a little bit. Let's go to another question. Let's see. You got it, Mike.
So my son is going to a pre-draft camp this weekend, and they said that he is welcome to bring a bio sheet. What is that? What should it contain? What should he do? I
got it.
Yeah, go ahead. Kick it to you.
A bio sheet is when you're too poor to buy one of those masks for diseases to wear on your face. So you just take a rubber band and a piece of paper and you put it over, and it stops all the biochemicals from coming into your body.
I don't think so. Try again.
Look, if they say bring a bio sheet, if you want to put the time and effort into it, you can. If you've got a fairly descriptive elite prospects page already, print it off. I mean, if your elite prospects shows you all the teams you've played for, and you can literally on that print off a elite prospects page. You can add some things yourself. You can pen in most valuable player on this team, or captain, or things that might not be on there. And you want to make some photocopies of that, that's fine. Nobody that is asking for a bio sheet is grading you. It's not like your 8th grade science project where they're going to grade you on your margins and how many paragraphs you've got and did you indent your paragraphs. No, they're just looking for information. So I am not. What's that?
Previous coaches put their contact information and stuff like that in there.
I'm surprised it's being asked. I'll be curious it's a pre-draft. I'd like to know what league that is, because if they're asking for that, that means they're probably it's not a bad thing, because if they got that information when they're looking at your kid, they can have a piece of paper in front of them. And that does help. Somebody that's watching a lot, because what I'm doing is every time the whistle breaks, I'm going to my laptop and looking at elite prospects on a different player that I saw that I liked on the ice. I've got a laptop, I've got a phone, I've got a pad of paper, and all of them are being used. So, as soon as the play stops, and even sometimes when the puck gets dumped in, I'll be trying to put a guy's last name in and hit enter so it pulls up by the time that, and if I'm not using elite prospects, I'm using RinkNet. Sometimes I got RinkNet on one, elite prospects on the other. So I don't think it hurts you to do it. And if they decide to give everybody a copy of that and they've got a piece of paper in front of them, they can write notes down on it. I don't think that's a bad thing.
No.
Is it common? The second part of the question is it common? No. Not common.
I don't think so. No. I think it's more common when players are reaching out to us or to different programs to say, hey, I'm so-and-so, I've been playing here, blah, blah, blah. Here's some of my video clips. Here's some of the coaches that have played for me. Here's some of the things that I've done in the past where it's just a little bit easier. But we're always going to go to Elite Prospect. We're going to do all that stuff on our own anyway.
Yeah, or
But
RinkNet.
our RinkNet. And we'll probably go to Instat and we'll watch more video because sometimes we want to see things outside of a highlight reel. But to go to a camp, like Jeff said, if they're printing those sheets out and giving them to the different scouts, it could also be, I don't know, if this is a camp that's got multiple teams, maybe not all the teams get the registration, and you can share that information with some of the other programs or whatnot of who the kids are.
So I fully agree with you. I would not worry about it too much. The process is be good on the ice, and they're going to dig that information one way or another. If you do a bio sheet, that's great. If you don't do a bio sheet, that's fine. I think that the bio sheet might get you into some more looks, though. I mean, I don't know what you think, Mike. If somebody's got a piece of paper and only 10% of the kids do a bio sheet, and you're one of the 10%, they got something to look at. If there's 100 kids there and there's only 10 bio sheets, they might be looking at your bio sheet, a lot more than they look at some of the other kids. So I don't think it hurt. Now, on the other side, if 90 people out of 100 do a bio sheet and you don't, I think that you're fine. I think either way you're fine. I don't really see it as being a requirement, but I also think that if you do it, don't try to do it to the point where I wouldn't go out to the paper store and buy some special colored paper on a special font and the special ink, and don't perfume it. All those things don't need to happen.
It's like you applying for a job. Is that what you're doing to your resume?
I always spray perfume when I go for a job. I put a little on me, so if I go in the interview, they connect the resume to me, and I spray a little on the resume paper too. You know what bothers me right now, though?
What bothers me
I got to worry about this. Makes me look shorter than you, and everybody knows that I'm like a foot taller than you.
Yeah, right. I'm just curious. You're a guy that wears perfume over cologne, huh? That's an interesting admission on your part.
Tomato. I don't know that. I don't know the differences. If I get a cologne for Christmas or a perfume, whatever they are,
it's cologne for men. It's perfume for women.
Whatever it is, if I get one of those, it usually stays in the closet until we do a spring cleaning, and then it kind of gets tossed to the side. I probably have had in my adult life. I've probably had 10 bottles, and I've probably used it once, maybe at my wedding. I used some of that stuff, And my son mocked me one time because I grabbed his. What's the thing you spray on the younger kids? It's not as fashionable now, but 5 or 10 years ago.
Oh, like the Axe body spray?
Yeah. I used that one time, laughing at him, and he went, "Dad, that's so out of style," because, he had an old bottle and he was now 15 years old. And when you turn 15, whatever you did at 14 is not cool anymore. So, Okay. Boy, oh boy, that really went in a weird place. Okay, what else we got?
You tell me. You're the one that can see the questions.
I don't have any more questions. Questions dried up. If you got any more questions, get them on quick because, we are now 40 minutes in and we can start wrapping up unless there's any more questions coming. Did we answer everything, though? Let's just see. I don't know what this connects to, Liz, because I looked at it too late. Liz says, that's me, Liz. Okay, Liz, I don't know which one that was connected to, so I apologize. Maybe I should have been paying attention instead of talking about Mike looking taller than me. That's not fair. I'm 6'2.5". What are you?
I just actually was measured. I used to be 6'2". I'm shrinking. I'm under 6'2" now. I'm like 6'1", and
you're like 5'8".
Yeah.
I just don't like that. I'm gonna have to fix this. It's bothering me. Gotta sit up somehow. Okay. All right, let's see. Okay, this one says, how important are the futures? Wow. If you ask Michael J. Fox, I'd say that it's pretty important. Futures are important. But, Mike, I think futures are extremely important, but in many ways that are not as recognized as you think. And when you say futures, these are the events, for those of you who don't know what a futures are, it's events for the 15-year-olds, the 16-year-olds that are the next wave of players that are going to be coming into juniors in the next year or two. They're not quite there yet. Next season, they're not coming to juniors, but the season after, maybe 2 seasons away, they're going to be a big part of the junior world. So are futures important? For the immediacy, no. There's no immediate need for futures now, with the exception of the USHL, because by rule the USHL plays 16-year-olds. Okay, they play younger players on purpose, and they're mandated to have those on their roster. So every roster has the exact same amount of young guys in the roster, and they limit the amount of guys that are going to be overagers. So you've got caps on both ends of that league. They allow younger, they really limit the older players, and that's why you see the NAHL with a lot of older, really talented players that maybe even have USHL experience, but just didn't have the ability to finish out their USHL career, because maybe there was 7 guys in their class and they only kept 3, and then the other 4 had to go either had to go to college or find another league to play in. So where is the futures role? Where does it fit into everything? Well, of course it fits into being seen, being spotted, being scouted. And it really does make a difference, because people that are in the prep world watch you. High school programs watch, especially in Minnesota, for the futures. USA Hockey watches these. Of course, the junior teams are watching these too. U18 programs, you really watch the futures and use that to help build. And it doesn't matter if it's a futures event for this league or for that league. The futures events are pretty incredible and pretty powerful in the long run. But probably the thing that's the hidden gem of futures is getting into that mode of how junior teams select players. How it's going to be several days. You got to be on top of your game. You're going to scrimmage a lot, and you're going to have to make it to the end to make an all-star game to move on. That's when you first get the taste of that during the futures prospects, futures or young prospects, young guns, whatever they're calling it. And it usually culminates with an all-star game. Some futures events are all in one day. I know the NCDC, they do it like their Young Guns event, and this may have changed because I haven't paid attention to it this year. Used to be just a game, and they just took all their best all-star players and played them in one game. And they backed it up with other all-star games, so you kind of had how the NAHL does it with the with their top prospects, where they take the guys that are uncommitted and they let them go play in a game. Did they do top prospects at Blaine this year? I didn't even pay attention.
I think it was in Philadelphia or somewhere this year.
Okay, because sometimes top prospects correlates and sometimes it doesn't. And I forget. You're right. Philadelphia. It's been in the Philly area like 2 of the last 3 years. Pandemic kind of threw everything out, so that makes sense. Okay. Anything you want to add to that, Mike?
No, I mean it's hard to know what my thought is on it until I know more about like what type of camp it is. Is it USHL? Like what league, and then what age level is the player? Because for us in the NAHL, we are a little bit of an older league. We're not even really scouting the U15 level at all. Like we may catch a few games throughout the year, but we're not spending really any time at that age level because it's too young. There's too many things that are going to happen. They're going to end up, the top kids are going to end up in the USHL, and then certain guys are going to continue to develop. Certain guys are going to plateau and get passed up. So once we get to U16, we're going to watch a little bit more, but not quite as much. And then 18s is where we're going to spend a lot of time. Juniors is where we're going to spend a lot of time, to find our next team. So if it's like a futures camp in the NAHL for really young kids, that's probably not important. You're not going to, ruin any opportunity by doing it. It's only going to maybe help. But if you didn't do it, it's not going to hurt you in any way.
Yeah. So
the USHL
look on the screen. It's USHL and BCHL. I can tell you right now, everything Mike said is spot on, except for the USHL. If you're going to do a prospects event for the USHL, that's draft material for that age. So
Yeah.
yes, you want to jump in and you want to shine at that event. And the thing about it is what's amazing. Here's the difference between the other leagues and the USHL. The USHL will watch a 15-year-old and keep that 15-year-old on track. In other words, when they see them or if they invite him to an event, there are people tracking him from all the teams and from the league at different levels as he moves up and progresses, 16s, 18s, and then maybe he starts out at a different junior league and then still gets drafted. You'll see kids that were part of the prospect event in the USHL, the futures event in the USHL as 15-year-olds, and then there's no contact. They actually divert off and go onto their own way. They go to the AJ. They go to play in the CC. They go and play somewhere else. All of a sudden, they're getting drafted because somebody kept their eye on the kid and liked them. So I do believe in the USHL. It's a powerful, powerful thing to do, more so than the other leagues, more so than the NAHL, more so than the BC, across the board. Now, the BC does take younger players. I just don't think you'll see the same results you'd see in the USHL if you shine. If you're one of those players that really rises above, the USHL draft's probably the most important. The futures event, not the draft, the futures event to get you to the draft. So
yeah, I would agree with that.
Did anything I say make sense?
Some of it.
It's just that I'm so frustrated right now with this height thing. I'm almost thinking about going to get a couple books and sitting on some books that show that I'm not a short little squat guy like it makes me look on here. Plus, you got the way you're sitting, you kind of got your arm up, making you even look taller.
Man, you are so insecure. We need to work on
I'm very insecure about this.
We need a different podcast where we just get inside of your mind and start working some of the programming that has diverted you in the wrong direction over the years.
Okay, so let's stay on the topic. Somebody says adjust your camera. Okay, my camera is
just tilt it down and you'll be taller.
It's mounted on top of one of the two big screens, and it's just above, but it's the lowest I can get it. And if I change the angle a little bit, you start seeing all the flooring behind me. And the days that I decide not to wear pants, you see that too. And it's just not a good look, Not a good look.
Are you in a booster chair right now?
I need a booster chair.
Yeah.
I'll figure this out. I'll spend $1,000 to get a different kind of lens.
There you go.
All right. Does the NAHL scout Americans playing in Canadian? Absolutely.
Yes.
Does the NAHL scout Americans playing in the Canadian junior leagues? We have one scout dedicated just from our program, just to the Canadian leagues. One guy watches all the leagues. Mike and I are always watching, seeing where the Americans are. We actually pull reports just on the Americans by league, and then we put a combination of those together. We will, as a team, and we're no different than anybody else, we will draft Canadian Americans out of the Canadian junior leagues this year. That it will happen. There will be Americans that will come out of the Canadian junior leagues, and it's historically the case. Now, the good news for the good and bad news. The bad news is there's not very many Americans playing up in Canada as there used to be. Pandemic changed things. So, for example, the AJ, which is prime breeding ground, CC, OJHL, MJ, Saskatchewan, those leagues all are prime breeding grounds. The leagues that we don't scout, I don't think anybody spends much time looking at Quebec. I don't think anybody spends much time looking at the Maritime, and very few people scout from the NAHL, scout the SIJHL, and it's just a matter of numbers and proximity and accessibility and talent level. So sans the Quebec League, the Maritimes, and the SIJHL, the rest of the leagues are heavily watched, in my opinion. Mike, you got anything to add to that?
Well, I would just say that the reason they are heavily recruited, the Americans playing in Canada, is because they don't cost anything. The program, if they go after a Canadian or the program goes after a European, they not only take up an import slot on your roster, which for a NAHL team you only get 4, they also cost money that you're either paying to Hockey Canada or you're paying to like the Swedish Federation or whatever, wherever that European country is that you acquired a player from, you have to pay for it. So an American that's playing in Canada, you get the advantage of getting a kid that has already been playing junior hockey and staying in a billet and training hockey all year round and all of those things that you're not going to find in a midget player or a youth player here in the United States. So there's a lot of value in finding kids that are already playing Canadian junior hockey that are American that you can add to your roster with. So yes, it's very heavily scouted by all teams in the NAHL.
Very good answer. Okay, folks, I'm not a complete idiot. Right? I know how to adjust the camera. Okay. There are many things that come into factor. If I put myself up too much, I put myself on a picture in the background, and that's not good. You want your background to stay independent. And what I'm doing is framing myself on the light blue background right now so that there's contrast and I don't get lost in the frames. Because I wear glasses, if you put glass on glass, so if I put these glasses up there, it throws everything off on the two different glossies hitting each other. Okay, then I just look like I'm a bobblehead inside of a frame. Okay, don't want that. Okay, not a complete idiot on this. What I have to do, I can't believe we're going into this, but okay, that's the
Hey,
fun
just so you know, I got some negative feedback and dings from our last episode from me chomping on gum the whole episode. So this is just your time. We got to just make fun of you on this one.
I wished I would have caught that, but I was too frantically trying to solve, the technical issues at hand. So I didn't have a chance to. What does this say here? Taking your chain, move the frame. Yanking your chain, move the frame. Move the frame. Okay, I could move the frame. I don't want to move the frame. Okay, that's a hockey pitcher back there. Okay, that's skates and a guy tying his skates. I like that picture, but I'll take it under. What's that?
Is that Gordie Howe putting his skates on back there?
It's just one of the teams I coached. They all signed the back of the picture, and it's just a picture of somebody lacing up their skates. Then on the other wall, there's another picture that all the players signed. So just let's get back to what we're doing here. The BCHL is now independent. What does that mean? It means they're independent. Really, they just don't follow the rules that abide from the national governing body. So far, as far as I'm concerned, it hasn't changed anything as far as, if at anything, it's lessened even more so the importance of Americans going up to the league because there was uncertainty. They came out of the pandemic. They were wounded. The pandemic wounded the BCHL more than any other league because they had that shutdown. They had to start charging players. They had some players that couldn't get across the border, either to or from. So that league took a big spanking during the pandemic. After the pandemic, less people last year considered going to play up there if they were Americans because of the fact that they were concerned about getting stuck up there if something else happened with the pandemic. That pandemic had a lot of effect on that league. Now that they're independent, they're trying to capture their market share. They're trying to capture those high-end players again. Don't get me wrong. They got some really, really good players up there, and they didn't fall off that much. But they took their lickings in it more so than any other junior league. The NAHL was probably second, right along with the USHL, because teams were folding in both those leagues, postponing, folding, whatever you want to say. Both happened. We lost teams, and we had teams that just postponed themselves. So I don't know. What do you think, Mike?
I like we keep saying, like I'm not sure what to think about what's going to happen now with the BC League. Like it could go really well for them, and things could be, that could be the best decision for them, or it could go in the opposite direction and really hurt them. We know, to your point of, the Americans that were going up and playing in that league, there's like two major pipelines that they would recruit from. You had the New England prep school kids that were going to the BC League, and that was kind of like a good pipeline for them to take kids. and the pandemic altered that. Also, you look at the kids that are playing hockey in California and out west. That's another kind of pipeline to go up and play in the BC League. So I don't really see that changing all that much from how it was before now that they're independent. I think the reality is they may go after more Europeans now. I really just don't know what to make of it yet until we get a season or two in to see, like,
Yeah.
what are they going to do now with being independent?
Next question. Thank you. That was a great question. What do the American Junior Leagues think of the CCHL? I can tell you what they think of the CCHL. It's a very good junior league. It's respected by Division I programs. It's respected by Division III programs, and it gets a lot of exposure. The difference between the American juniors, and when I say American juniors, the only two leagues that really count when you're talking about what the CCHL, what it means if you're playing in the CCHL, is the USHL or the NAHL. And the easy way to answer that is to give you an example. You can look at and I don't, once again, I'm doing this blind. This is not a preloaded question. So if we pull up the USHL first, and hopefully it comes up here, there we go. And we just go down here and we sort by have to have experience in the CCHL. And this number could be big or small. I have no idea, but I'm going to tell you, we'll all find out together. So right now there are 3 players from that league. Let's now look at the NAHL and do this from the NAHL's perspective. So go back up here, type in the NAHL. And this is a feature on the Elite Prospects that you could have too if you do they're not a sponsor of our show, but they do have the premium level. I'm running premium on this, so I'm getting the ability to sort and do stat stuff that may not happen on the regular Elite Prospects level. But hey, for a couple bucks a month, if you're interested in this stuff, it's definitely worth it. Okay, we grab the CCHL here. I have a feeling this number is going to be significant. And there we go. So the NAHL has 26 players that played this last season. You've got guys, total points here, 45-point player. That's pretty darn good. A 44-point player. You've got good players, coming out of the CCHL. And that's a fairly good number of players from one league. It doesn't seem like a lot, but 26 plus 2 goalies, you got almost 30 players in the league. If I go and sort by, I bet you that's better than what the AJHL has. And the AJ is considered, the top dog as far as the top players overall, and the AJ, well, just a few less. So 26 versus 28. And then, another league that you can look at just to kind of get a sense of things is look at the OJHL. And these are your bigger leagues. And I could do this with the SJ. I could do it with the Manitoba, the MJ. So the OJ, being one of the biggest leagues, actually is less than both those with 21 and 4 goalies. So they're sitting at 25. I don't know, Mike, did that help explain it at all? You're going through and looking at the...
Yeah, I mean, it definitely shows where that league is kind of pushing their players up to. I think if you would have gone through and maybe looked at NCAA D3, like, again, you're going to see kids that top out at the CCHL level that end up playing college hockey and things like that. From my personal perspective, as we watch different junior leagues, I think I even made a comment to you earlier this year where I was like, if I'm spending time watching the SJ or then the MJ and then all of a sudden the CCHL, you can just see by watching the games which league has the better players in that given year. And the CCHL is a good league. Like, there's good players. I like watching their games because they're competitive, they're fast, they got talented players, they finish their checks. Like, it's just a more honest game, than maybe some of the competition. But to Jeff's point, it's not always the end point. The kids that play in the CCHL, they may play there a year or two and then end up in the USHL or end up in the NA or they may end up in the AJ or the BC League. They may move on from the CCHL into some of the Canadian junior leagues that are perceived as higher levels. So it's a good league. We definitely scout that league a lot, and there are good Americans. I would say of all the leagues, I feel like there's a lot of Americans that do play in the CCHL also. So
Yeah,
from our
it's
perspective, we get a lot of options.
yeah. So there's with goalies, there's over 200 players that are playing Division III out of the CCHL, and you're absolutely right. I mean, there is. It's not a spattering of Americans. 3 of the top 5 players this year, in as far as points go, that came from the CCHL were American players. Now, the argument can be made that you're going to see, that not as many Canadians want to go play Division III college hockey because there's academic opportunities with hockey in Canada that if you're not an NCAA Division I player, but these guys, there's what people don't understand. One of the biggest things that people don't understand is Division III hockey players become pros, and a lot of pro hockey, European and the lower level, AJ and below, and the European leagues, even in the Asian markets now, there's pro opportunities, and Division III college hockey players from good leagues become professional hockey players. And you're going to get not just 1 or 2, you're going to get dozens of guys coming out of the Division III ranks. So, a lot of guys that are in Canada still stay on the Division III track, and they go to schools. You go to the Uticas, you go to the I'm thinking of some other ones that Wisconsin Stevens Point. You go play for Adrian. These are programs that'll kick out their seniors. Well, their senior year, they'll get done with their classes early so they can jump in and play pro hockey. And some of these guys play pro hockey 1 year. Some of these guys play pro hockey for 10 years. Depending on their situation. But if that urge and that achievement level wants to be reached in that guy's inner body, you still have that opportunity with D3 hockey. Now, not every program, you still got to be in that upper echelon. But in some ways, that Division III player, here's the funny thing. If you're a 3rd or 4th liner playing in an NCAA Division I program, you have less propensity statistics-wise to go play pro hockey somewhere than the guys that are playing 1st or 2nd line playing in a really good Division III program. So take it for what it is. There's a lot of decisions that have to be made there on where your choices are. I hope that helps a little bit. I know we kind of went off on.
I'll just make one more comment on it too, just to kind of paint a picture for somebody if they're considering that league. Whenever I'm tracking a kid that, is playing midget hockey currently, and I like the player, but he's just not quite ready to play in the North American League or to play for our program, and I find out that they're going to play in the CCHL, I actually get excited about that because I think the player's still going to have a chance to develop, and I can keep watching that player to see what he turns into. There's other leagues that I won't mention that when I hear one of those players is going to play in that league, I question, is this going to be a guy that's going to be an option for us in the future based on where they're going?
Yeah. As we wrap up, Mike's point's extremely valid because, you have to keep in mind there's leagues of opportunity for you to ascend through, and there's leagues that are actually the end point. So what's the difference? Most guys go into the SIJHL. That league suits a purpose. There is, playing hockey in that part of, the U.S. and that part of Canada, it fills a market. There is a need for hockey in that area. I'm not saying the league is a bad league in that sense, but you're probably not going to move on from that league unless you're a really young player when you play it, a year there. You play in the CCHL, you can stay there and go Division I. There are guys that come right out of there. They get their D1 commitments right out of the CC and go play D1. The majority of them leave and go somewhere else, the NAHL, the USHL couple, the BCHL, then they go play Division I hockey. So you got to be careful, especially on the East Coast of the United States, because, I'll call a spade a spade. The NCD is a closed circuit for the most part. Now, a lot of players will leave that league and go to the NAHL. Their top players will leave and go play to the NAHL. But if you're looking to play, and to progress out of there and up, it can't be from their elite program. It can't be from their premier program because it's a closed circuit. They want you to stay in that. They want that to be the destination for you inside of their own system. So just be careful. Not to say there's not good players coming out of that league. I'm saying If you're in their elite division, the odds of you making it to the NCDC division by, being above average at elite and then above average at premier, you're going to run out of time before you can get to the NCDC. They'll just go out and find a player somewhere else out of 16s or 18s or out of prep and just bypass you. So don't expect that to be the case. And we're only talking about statistics here. Are there good coaches in those leagues? Absolutely. I've got great friends that are coaching in all those leagues. Okay, people that I've respected coach in those leagues. So it's not a matter of that. It's just how they've set up and designed their overall process is what we're talking about. They're designed to be their own closed entity. Most of the other leagues that are, your OJ is more closed than your CC. OJ, why? Because they have more of a relationship with major junior hockey. They get young guys, they want to keep them for a year or two, and then get them into major juniors. You don't see as many Americans playing in the OJ as you do see Americans play in the CC, and that's one of the reasons why. So hopefully that helps a little bit. All right, are we done, Mike?
Yeah, unless there's any more questions that have come in, I think we're good.
I don't think we want to wait around for any more questions. It's not been a good night for me on the questions. People are mocking my picture in the back and telling me to adjust my camera and the frame and my seat. And okay, like I didn't think of any of those other things. When I noticed it, I just went, oh boy, maybe there's some way I can just make use. I don't know. We'll figure something out. All right. Guys, thanks so much for joining us tonight. If you're watching on video, thank you so much. Make sure, if you're doing this on YouTube, to like and subscribe. It's very important to us. If you get a chance to go, if you're not a part of the discussion group, go join the discussion group. Join all the fun. Like I said, 9,100. We're on our way to 10,000. Join the fun. Be a part of it. Join that group. Like and subscribe to this. Enjoy your night. Enjoy the off season. We will be back. We're going to do one more right before the draft in about a week and a half, maybe.
I think we're planning on doing, episodes up until we get to the NA draft, and then that'll probably be it until the next following season.
And the new improved. Maybe I'll be the Blake Shelton of the voice, and maybe I'll give up my crown and we'll bring Reba in to sit in my chair here. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's an American show, music show on TV. Wasn't a very good reference.
I think I've seen enough of it to know what you're talking about, and Blake is now leaving the show, correct?
Yes.
Perfect. So we'll come back next time where we just spin around in our chairs to see who the questions are coming in from.
You can do that all you want because your chair is higher than my chair.
Perfect. Yeah, you're small, little guy.
Yeah. All right. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for watching tonight. Take care.
Have a good night, everyone.